We are in bed with books. Thank you for joining us this week. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Bethany. If you'd like to find us outside of wherever you're listening from, then you can find us on our website, inbedwithbookspod.com, on Instagram at inbedwithbookspod, and find us on YouTube for video versions of the podcast and bonus episodes.
So let's jump right in. So what did you think? Well, I guess what book are we talking about today, Bethany?
Oh, yeah. Welcome back. We are in bed with books and we're talking about The Cruel Prince by Holly Black.
Yes.
And I bought this like before we were a podcast because I was like, ooh, what I want to read.
And then I just and everything.
Yeah, and I just didn't get around to it because we were reading a lot of other stuff. And now I was like, I'm so glad we read this because it's like gorgeous.
I loved it a lot more than I was expecting. It definitely it wasn't what I was expecting either. So I think that helped.
Yeah, it was like the world was like incredibly enchanting and like this like really innocent like fairy tale like way, but it was incredibly sinister. That was so cool. Like,
well, this is why, and I think I've talked, or at least when we've talked about this being part of our season, I love fairies, like this kind of fairies. I read these a few times as a kid too, and I like, there's something really engaging as a reader when they like the part of the fairy lore where they can't tell lies. And so you're always like reading their words for these kind of like backhanded meanings for like where's the hidden kind of like loophole in what they're saying. And I love that element, that kind of it reminds me of Labyrinth. If that makes sense, like the David Bowie movie. Very kind of, because there's even one part in the book where they're like, and the Goblin King is cracking bones, and I was like, oh, that's Jareth. But yeah, I love that trickster energy that fairy stories have.
And I said this to you before, is that fairies are like really intense.
Yes.
It's like because of like the oaths, the deals or whatever, the court like is a big part of it, right? Because they can't lie, so it's like everything has to be in riddles and like, you know, innuendo or whatever. But like but there's also like this, and then they can do compulsion. And so like the treatment of humans is really interesting in this book, and also what they think of humans. There's in fact a quote Carden says about like what is, you know, what mortal means. It means death. It means deserving of death, like you were born to die. And just like this kind of really interesting. But then there's something, I think it was the Ghost that was talking about how, or the Roach, I can't remember, that there's things humans can do that they can't. And so
I think it was,
I really wanted,
because he's half mortal.
So I'm like really interested to like get more into that a little bit, because that wasn't really, I wanted a little bit more. And then they like kind of cut off the conversation, and I was like, I wanted to know, like, maybe that'll come back.
I hope it does. I think it will. Well, because there's something that Jude says where she talks about like, I think it was when she was having the conversation with Oriana about Oak, about like who Oak really is, where she mentions the fact that like all of this, like the fairy world, like the Seelie courts, the Unseelie courts, the Undersea, all of them wouldn't exist anymore without humans, because their blood is so weak when it comes to procreation that like without humans intermingled in the bloodlines, they wouldn't survive. And so I love that, like, it's almost the fact that they're so dependent on humans that makes them hate them so much. Because there's another part, I can't remember who said it actually, but there's a part where they talk about like the human worlds, or like that their world wouldn't exist as it does without the human world. Like the realms themselves are dependent on each other, not just like as individuals, but as like entities.
As like a system.
Yeah. So I do think it's something that's going to come up a bit more, especially because now the king of the High King is technically under control of a mortal for the next year and a day, which is fun.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw that coming as I was like, okay, so one part of my reading notes is my theories along the way. These reading notes were like definitely more heavily like my guesses, because again, like with berries, I'm always trying to like riddle out what they're saying. And she's not even like Fae, she's not the folk, and she out riddled all of them. But I was like, okay, so use oak to just put, I don't think they ever really clarified how old oak was, but that was like, so use oak to put the crown on Cardin's head.
Yeah, that was super exciting. Like I was like, oh shit, like because there's that exposition that she has like in the middle of the action where she starts breaking down why Cardin like won't trust her anymore. Like, and you're thinking, oh, it's because his relationship with Balkan like is like stronger than she realized. And so then you think, oh no, like he's going to betray her and like actually crown him. Oh, I just loved that like paragraph was so tight and it was so good. And then she's like, or he's just not going to trust me anymore because I'm gonna like, and then you're like trying to figure out what she's talking about.
Exactly. So I did say that like in my theories, I was like, that should just like, that's an easy answer. That's what you do. The oak crowns Cardin. But as it was getting closer, like it didn't even occur to me that that's what she was going to do, because she was so firm when she had talked about her plan so many times that she was just going to use oak. And I was like, as they're going into this, I'm thinking she hasn't even figured out a way to like protect oak for the next 7 years. People are definitely going to come after him. Are Heather and Vivian just supposed to like be on the run the entire time that they're like raising this child? Doesn't explain anything, because it didn't take much for Maddox to find Jude and her sisters and her mother after he had like a rumor that she was alive. So she fooled me. And that's kind of what I love. She fooled us. Like I even saw the same outcome that she was going for, and she still fooled me. So she has definitely earned her place at the High Palace, the High King's side, for sure.
It happened really fast though, because she was just like, oh, like the whole slaughter happened, and then she's like has like 24 hours to like figure out a plan to bring back to the Court of Shadows. And then she comes up, she like learns, she comes up with kind of a plan. And then even, I can't remember, I get the ghost and the
you're good.
They're like interchangeable to me. I'm like, I don't know. Is like, oh, well, here's like, and then like irons it out and stuff. She gets like her alliances, and then like, it's just like, because book 1 is like 80% of the book. And then like everything like starts kind of happening, boom, 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 boom. And so then you're like still trying, you're still trying to like piece together, like, what are they going to do with Oak for 7 years? Like, what are we going to like, she's just so sure of her plan. Like,
and she does, even before she has a plan.
I love, so the beginning of this book, you're like, you think, okay, Jude's like this child. Not only is she a child, she's like a mortal.
Okay, yes. On that note, it took me probably about half the book to really conceptualize the fact that these are like 17-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Because, and I feel like this goes back to what you were saying with like the somehow like childlike but sinister element of the story, where like they feel like these Alice in Wonderland, like Alice just kind of like lost. Like I imagine them in these kind of like pinafore style dresses. Like they talk about the really childlike nature of their outfits, and they're just like they got their book, their parchment and their things, and they're going to school, and everyone's bigger than them because they're surrounded by a bunch of fae gentry. And so like it, because you got like the image you make in your head, right? So like it took about half the book before I could really like in my head fit this as a 17-year-old girl.
Well, yeah, and so I think it was really brilliant, and this is like what the overused word of aesthetics does, right? Is this like you stepped into this like magical forest barefoot, and everyone's wearing berries in their hair, and they're like, you know, the music's so compelling that you have to dance all night, and it's just like this magical land where you ride frogs, and like, you know, and everyone's got green skin, and it's this like cool like thing. And then all of a sudden she's like, you see like horrific acts of torture, and like like done in like pretty explicit ways, I would say, because even Maddox, like her whole like origin story of like her parents dying, and like all of a sudden now Maddox like this fatherly figure.
The like jump was absurd and great.
Yeah. And I was trying to figure out, I kept thinking Vivian was younger.
Yeah.
But realized that she's the older one, so it makes sense that she has more roots in the human world.
Yeah.
And that Taryn and Jude are just kind of like, no, we're like we're part of this now.
They don't they don't know any different. They're like sisters, all three of them, like dynamic was really interesting. Because it hadn't occurred to me until Vivian said it near the very end that like okay, so sorry, backtrack a little bit. I got really annoyed with her more than once because she's just trying to like convince Taryn and Jude to leave. It's like, what are you going to do with them now? And then we see when she has that kind of like, she has the flashback to when they escaped when they were like 9 or something. And how they tried to spell this woman, but they felt bad, so they lived in a hotel and they only ate ice cream until the girls begged her to take them back, right? It wasn't until the very end when Vivian kind of explicitly said it that I realized like she blames herself for all of it, for the way that they've been warped as people, because otherwise they wouldn't have been there. I mean, not that their life would have been any better if their parents had died and Maddox like hadn't decided to do the kind of responsible, like the honorable thing. They would have just they would have been thrown into the system. That would have sucked also.
The sisters were really interesting because Taryn and Jude were both like very like committed to Fairy. And they went in completely different directions.
I mean, I'm sure this comes as no surprise. I don't like Taryn. And not because like her goal was to get married and stay in the court that way, but because when they're arguing, she insists like, what difference does it make? You hate Fairy. Why would you want to stay? Like, I'm different than you. It's like her dream was to be a knight. She wanted, like, granted, she wanted a much different space than you did, but she wanted like a very firm spot within the court. She wanted to stay in that world too. She doesn't hate them. She might like have retained some bitterness over the fact that she couldn't really choose those parts of her life. But
because she would like aggravate like the gentry, like kids.
Yeah.
Kids. Like, and so it like Taryn couldn't wrap her head around why she would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that's why, because she just refused to really, I guess, see her sister's side of that.
Yeah.
And on top of that, she let Locke, like, I had a bad feeling it was Locke too, because the first couple of times that Jude notices that he's noticing her is when her and Taryn are standing right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, you have no idea whether it was actually you he was looking at and winking, or her that he was looking at and winking. But she honestly did not have any reason to be mad at Jude at the very end, because she was the one who, like, because when they have that, like, that kind of duel, she's the one who just stood by and let it happen. Like, imagine that they aren't fairy for a second, and I won't say like you and Milo, but like imagine you're dating somebody and they're like, I want to really test your love, so I'm gonna court your twin sister and you can't say anything about it. And if you can tolerate that, then I'll know you really love me. Like, no, that's not an okay. That's not somebody you want to spend your life with.
It's not clear, and this would be an easy way out, but I wonder if he used compulsion.
I mean, possibly.
Yeah.
Which would be equally terrible.
Yeah, which would need to be like addressed later.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably when they have like like a falling in.
Yeah.
If ever. But I have a feeling I have a feeling they're setting it up to be like a court thing.
Yeah.
Like,
no, for sure.
It's gonna be like a Balkan-matic thing again, where it's like it'll be Locke versus Carden and all that. Probably.
But yeah, I don't have pity for Taryn over those things.
Yeah.
Because there would have been times before the potential compulsion where, like, she just hid this from her sister.
Yeah, because they weren't on good terms. I feel like I need more information.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
I feel like I don't like, because we're just getting like Jude's perspective, and she's.
But also, like, the moment for that is past. Like, that's what I mean too, is like Taryn should have come forward after all of it happened too and been like, here's what happened. But instead she's like holding this kind of like resentment against Jude that is not her place to hold. Because if she's angry at Jude for the relationship with Locke, what's she gonna do? Like, she couldn't tell him Jude didn't know.
Yeah. Locke is a smarmy son of a bitch.
I didn't trust him. The second he was like, I like a good story, I was like, that's bullshit. That's not trustworthy. Not that any of them are trustworthy.
I want someone to bite his dick off.
I want somebody to, I don't know, burn him up.
I want someone, I want someone to like tell him to walk off cliff.
I could imagine Carden doing something pretty terrible and fun. But because he's obviously in love with Jude.
Yeah.
I did not like him at first.
Yeah.
Like, at all. He was like, as the title implies, he was very cruel.
Yeah.
And then kind of the explanation for me didn't really fix it. But the way they worked together is leading me to being less hateful towards him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there were some things beginning of the book that I was like, I don't know if this is redeemable.
Agreed.
It felt very Castile. Like, I was like, dude, like, you can't do that. Like,
well, also, like, Castile would never do the kind of like explicitly cruel. Like, he was just doing it to have fun. Like, that's the vibe you get from Carden. Just like, what was one of the first things he did? Oh, like the kicking dirt in their food, and then he just like taunts them. I'm like, how old are you? I think that's another reason that I had a hard time sometimes conceptualizing how like old this whole group was, because they were acting like childish.
Like they were in middle school. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was like the whole like, like the fairy fruit scene, and then afterwards, like who's telling the parents, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
She could have fucking
any
died.
of your parents. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, it's just kind of there was kind of a disconnect there. I was just like, because then she does bring up like, oh, if Maddox knew about this, he'd like fuck them all up. And it's like, then why are they doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Why do they feel like they can get away with it? And like,
exactly.
When you have like a host of witnesses that live in the household, like,
yeah,
weird.
I'm not gonna lie, I probably, in her position, I would have had no problem telling Maddox.
Yeah.
Because I'd want him to exact like revenge for what they did. But I think that's another reason. So like when we find out the explanation is that they had just confused the sisters and they thought they were punishing the one that Locke was like secretly dating. That was another moment I was like, Taryn really does not get to be the one that's angry here. It's her fault that her sister got started with that stuff. She did not fess up. And then she couldn't even like allude to it. She doesn't need to tell them out or tell like Jude outright that it's because she's dating Locke, but she could tell her like, it's my fault that they're treating you like this and I can't explain why, but like, please back off because of that. Instead, she just tried to like, not manipulate, I guess, but tried to like appeal to her through like courtly intrigue. I don't know, not intrigue, but like implying that her bad behavior was coming down on Taryn when it's like, no, Taryn's behavior is coming down on Jude. And instead of acknowledging that, Taryn has made herself the victim both ways.
Yeah, she's just being passive.
Yeah. And not in like a safe way at all. Just in it's somehow, her passivity is somehow instigating more drama because her sister is of course going to continue to do those things. They all know it.
Yeah, it's like who she is.
Yeah.
I think we established your like hate character this book.
Yeah. I was expecting it to be Carden actually. Or even Locke, but no, it's Taryn. Because she sold her sister.
Yeah, I really hated Locke.
That's fair.
I got.
Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Locke's right up.
No,
there.
yeah. I mean, Locke. They're all bad, but it's like Locke had a particularly gross place in my mind. I didn't like when they described like. It reminds me of Parks and Rec. You know what I'm talking about. When Joe, Leslie's like boyfriend, he's like got the buzz cut and he's like super nice and everything. I don't think it's Joe. It's something. Oh, the cop? Justin.
Oh, yes.
And he just likes stories.
Yes.
And he just goes around and collects stories.
That's literally what I thought of.
This is literally like a poison version of that. Like, yeah. Because he's doing it because he has power over them. Yep. And he's bored. Like, yep. and I didn't like that because
agreed.
I was surprised he didn't take it further physically. I think it could have been implied.
Agreed.
That would have been where it led.
I was surprised when Taryn continued through with the engagement.
Yeah.
For the very reason that like his test is done now. Do you really still want him?
Yeah.
And that kind of whole conversation is also why I still like Maddox.
I knew you were gonna love Maddox.
Yes, because he's honorable.
He's flawed, but like in an honorable way.
Yes, like he has his word. He has his reasons for doing what he did.
Yeah.
I had like from the very beginning of the coup, I had no doubt that like Maddox had a kind of second play in this. Do I appreciate or can I appreciate a little bit of like evil? Yeah, definitely. His whole like his play to try to be regent so that he can like I'll respect it. I'll respect the hustle. But the fact that he like outright told Taryn and Jude like I don't think Locke is good enough for either of you was big.
Yeah.
Because they are still mortals and
like he was willing to like conspire to murder him with her.
Yeah, exactly. He pretty much offered her right there.
I also love that he was like, "You're not a killer," and then like, the dynamic between him and Jude was really strong.
Yeah.
And not in like a not in a very predictable way. It was a very like interesting way because like there's that conversation she has with herself that she's like, I just became him, like, which he symbolizes literally murdering her parents, like, and she's like kind of okay with it. Like she's never like been like, this is bad. Like she said this is bad, but I don't think she's saying it in like in a derogatory sense, you know, like she's literally said
kind of like the fact.
Yeah, she's literally said like like that she's liked something, and liking this is like, and then it'll be like one line, it'll be like liking this is bad, like as an example. But to me, I don't think she's saying that that's a bad thing.
I don't think I think she's passing just like personal judgment on it.
Yeah, like I think she's actually just being like, and this is bad. Like this is just me now. Like, and I kind of liked that. Like you could kind of feel that like developing as she starts like kind of getting into like more of the shadows.
One thing that I kind of had to pay attention to as well as things were getting deeper, especially into like book 2, is that like because she can lie, she can also lie to herself. So she has this insistence where I can't remember who she's talking to, but she like turns around and she's like, Maddox is not my father. I think she's talking to the Court of Shadows when she's trying to be like, I'm not gonna, like, I'm working with you guys, not him.
Yeah.
Because like folk can't lie.
Yeah.
And more than once they call him her father, they call Oak her brother. Like she might still be angry and kind of trying to like not recognize the family dynamics. But whether by blood or not, like that's what they are.
Yeah.
When we have like the epilogue, or not is it the epilogue?
At the end.
Yeah. Because at one point Oak even says, is mom going to be able to visit? Oriana is not his mother by blood. Yeah. But he recognizes her as his mother, and so he's able to say it as fact.
I actually have a comment on this. Like,
yes,
I made a note about that there's this really interesting, unique way that fairies or the folk see bloodline. Like, it may, like, because you would think, like, because, like, we kind of get, like, the bloodline fascination, right? As a species, due to, like, tribalism and like monarchies, and which has influenced monarchies and stuff. This still has like that monarchy model of like bloodline, but Oriana has like not, like she's not the evil stepmother. She holds no like ill will towards them. In fact, she even says Maddox really loved your mother, like, which is really big. And then the fact that Oak is not her own, like, and it makes sense because they can't like reproduce very easily. And so here you have like them taking in mortals, taking in people who aren't of their blood, like that I think is like really interesting. And also like in a way Jude has adopted that same kind of ideal with like place. Like she's not like, fuck you all, I want to go back home. Like she's definitely taken this on as her own. Like she even says like that's like, she doesn't call that her home. She calls the folk her, like fairy her home. And this is like where I belong. And so it's just very interesting how
well, I think on the one hand it helps that like Oriana and Maddox's marriage is one of convenience, because there's the conversation where she's like confronting Oriana about it when she walks in and she's like, I can't imagine Maddox like being comfortable in this room, and it's like because he probably doesn't go to it that often. And And so of all of them, Vivian is the only one who actually technically has a place in the house. But Oriana has a big heart and Maddox has like good morals. For better or worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think part of the issue is that like his own personal morals are so strong that other people view it like as violence, whereas Jude can see that it's like, because she's constantly like, because that is in his nature.
I would say Maddox has conviction.
Yeah.
Which is comforting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you know what to expect. Like, that's why I didn't expect him to be making the play for Balkan. I think he was like, that's why you could see that he was using the coup for his own gains. Because his conviction wouldn't let him.
Yeah.
Like, look at the loving, like you were saying, like, look at the loving home that he has created for his daughter and this group of orphans.
Yeah.
Which, granted, they've learned weird things, but that is just like the nature of growing up in fairy courts. Versus the very violent, kind of corrupted Hollow Hall that Balkan had. Like, that's just such stark differences. He would not be able to follow a king that does that.
Yeah.
Especially with mortal children.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, like you said, like a comfort in that conviction.
Yeah. Kind of going back to like Jude and Maddox's relationship though, like he's like this he's the mantra she's breaking.
Yeah.
You know, that we keep talking about that, but
yeah, well, because it's like a great way to think about
it is like,
yeah.
But if people don't know what it means, it just means like there's this mantra with a character and then the whole point of their arc is to break it. And so I feel like her relationship with Maddox, you realize is kind of fatherly pretty soon. Like, she still loves him. Maybe not the same as she would her father if he was still alive, but like because of the act that he did, but she still like respects and understands why he did it, I guess. Or has and I don't think she says I forgive him, but she's just,
well, she recognizes it as this line they'll never be able to move past.
Yes.
And real quick to kind of cite the whole mantra thing, that was V. Schwab who said that. And I think I think it was like an AMA thing.
Okay.
But so in response to what you were just saying, she does also acknowledge that like she, for better or worse, loves him. And I think part of that goes back to just the fact that she has, the same way that like going back to the human world would not be going back home for her. She has lived more life now with Maddox as this guiding, like authoritative and positive figure in her life. Like, yes, the very first thing they did together was witness him murdering her parents.
Sorry, I just thought of something.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm but the rest of their time together has been him raising her, him inviting her into their home. She even has the moment when she recalls like how much her and Taryn were crying on the ride like into Fairy the first time. And she was like he could have compelled us or compulsed us to not cry, but he let us feel our grief.
Yes, and then that's when you're like, oh, he's a nice guy.
Or he
like, you're like,
acknowledges,
oh, that redeems him a little bit. You're like, yeah.
He lets these kids have agency.
Yeah.
They could have spent their entire lives in Sorcelled or whatever it's called. But they don't. He raises them as equals.
Do you think he didn't want her to be a knight because of what was going to happen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize that until now. I was like, that's why, because it seems like something he would totally support her in.
Because he wants to wait, or my thinking was he wanted to wait until he was the regent specifically, because then he could like raise her up to a higher station or something.
Yeah.
there's a moment even at the very end when, or I guess near the end, near coup part 2.
Yeah.
When Balekin is kind of like trying to offer her anything in exchange for Carden, and he's like, I could offer you marriage, anyone in the court. And you could almost feel like Maddox like rolling his eyes because he knows the one thing that she wants.
Yeah. And he's just dumb.
Yeah. And so like then a few minutes later when they have the fight, the best thing he could have done is exactly what he did, which was fight her like an equal.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have killed her, but I think if he wanted to, he could have done so very easily. He killed her parents in like a matter of seconds.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to kind of push her.
Yeah.
I don't think he wanted to kill him.
I think he wanted to also
defeat her, like.
Yeah. But like to
down,
see if she has the gumption to stand behind what she's doing. And then he realizes that she's like poisoned him and he's like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
He got outplayed.
Yeah. There's this passage that I thought was so good. I really liked the writing in this book. It was just like really, I underlined a few spots. There's this passage and I'm awful because I never know like the context. I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but she says, she's talking about kind of like what would happen if she like wasn't in Fairy and kind of what Fairy has made her into. And it's page 287, and she says, when the wolves come for that, Jude, she'll be eaten up in an instant, and wolves always come. It frightens me to think of myself so vulnerable, but as I am now, I am well on my way to becoming one of the wolves. Whatever essential thing thing the other Jude has, whatever part that's unbroken in her and broken in me, that thing might be unrecoverable. Vivi is right. It cost me something to be the way I am, but I do not know what, and I don't know if I can get it back. I don't even know if I want it. So she's like, as she's making this like descent, right, into like shadow, that's kind of like the only like description I can think of is like she's lying, she's conspiring, right? She's a spy. You can't help but love her for it. Like she's not surviving in a way that's like just get by, which is kind of what like I was just literally gonna say that like, oh, like because like Taryn's kind of the foil, right, of like this is the other way she could have gone. But she goes a completely different way, and it's like not defeat, it's elevation. She's elevating herself because she has this brilliant quote at the beginning of the book where she says, true power isn't granted, true power can't be taken away. And so she's creating,
she says it at the end too. She says it at the very end in like the midst of their coup, coup part 2, because like she's still focused on that. She has this other line, and I should have highlighted it, but she talks like it's just this one simple line where she's like, I don't want to be as good as them, I want to be better. Yeah, essentially. Yeah. And she is, as she's doing this scheming, that's why it feels so good, because you can like see her outwitting all of them, her dad, Carden, Balekin, the other leaders, because she comes in and you can see that they're also kind of like, if the moment should arise, then we will support you. They don't expect her to actually accomplish it.
Yeah, and here she is, this like mortal just like walking into their camp, like
and she does it. She shows all of them.
I thought this was one of the few books that I've read that has a really intense transformation, because you start like kind of what I was starting to get at like before was like, it starts off like super childish. Yeah. And it's not that we learn more about her, it's that she descends, like I don't want to say descend, you know what I mean? Like but like it's not that like, oh, things are kind of like unmasking itself and we start to learn where everyone came from and why they are the way they are and like why they're doing the things they're doing. It's like, no, we know from the get-go what happened, and now we're watching her story, right, play out, and it's like she's actually way more badass than we thought she was.
Yeah,
that she led on at the beginning, that she thought she was. And like even at the end when she was like kind of breaking the Maddox mantra of like, I am a killer, like, and she's like starting to like disprove all of these things. And I just love it, because it's just like, you're just like, fuck, like, and then at that, God, those like last couple pages when she's just like, yep, like she just like she tricked us, which is like the ultimate, meta, like
yes, showing her place in the world.
Yeah.
She kind of tying that in again to like the writing. So she being Holly Black, the author, starts it off with this pretty gruesome scene, which is, like I said, like at the beginning, with it totally blew my expectations out of the water, was because of this opening. And then the next chapter is a single line. And then the next chapter jumps right into the story. But at chapter 6, she goes, I've told this story all wrong. There are things I really ought to have said about growing up in Fairy. I left them out of the story mostly because I am a coward.
Mm.
And so you also, okay, so real quick, the like Fae as this like thing were a product of oral tradition in the UK mostly, I think. And so I also love that this like storytelling, Scotland. But like Scotland, like the UK generally, Ireland, all three of them, it goes all of them. Like this storytelling motif is getting tied into it as well. And so like the reason she's able to, I guess, trick us is because of this very thing where she's telling the story the way she wants to tell it. She's not being a reliable narrator because, as she says, she's left things out of the story. And it's not all because she's a coward. Maybe it is early on, because then she goes on to list like some pretty traumatic things that happened to her. But she's like, Holly Black and then also Jude as the narrator are very conscious of the story that they're telling us.
I kind of like that. I totally
same. That. I love that.
Yeah, that they're like being like, there's kind of an extra layer,
like the kind of like fourth wall breaking. Yeah. No, I love that. Especially because it gives her power as the narrator as well. Because like it gives her power in that she is controlling the narrative around it. And so even when you're expecting her to lose, you're like, well, no, because she's telling the story. She wouldn't tell us if she lost because she's a coward, or because she claims to be a coward about things where she felt powerless. Right. You know? Yeah. So I love that she's like an outspoken, with unreliable narrator. Yeah. She's like, you really shouldn't trust me. Yeah. Yeah.
I know I already touched on it, but I like I said, like so many things in this book I like underlined. And I don't have a page number, sorry. It's towards the end though. Where she says, Fairy might be beautiful, but its beauty is like a golden stag's carcass, crawling with maggots beneath its hide, ready to burst. Kind of like, oh, like this beautiful golden stag, and then it's just like rotten inside, or just like, not only that, but it's gonna burst. Like it's just this really intense world. That
one of the like scenes that I think really, really captures that like line between like the beautiful and the kind of scary that happens in Fairy is when she gets force fed the apple, because you can like the moment when her like mortal body has been subjected to it is when she's like straight up choking, and she was like, the terrible thing is that I didn't care, I just wanted more of the apple, because it's like the thing that's they're gonna hunger for it, and they're gonna be drugged until they get more of it, and it's gonna make it worse. But the transition between that, like just before when Valerian is on top and he's like stuffing it into her mouth, and then she doesn't see who knocks him down. Suddenly she's taking off her clothes because she's been asked to, and then like she asks Nicosia if she's beautiful as her, and Nicosia just says no. And it's like there's something so heartbreaking, not just about the fact that she said it, but about the fact that she's not even like of sound mind enough to recognize the exchange that just happened.
Yeah.
And I think that like that scene is one of those ones where like it really sums up that like that golden stag with a rotting carcass.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is the first time that they get bullied like out in the open.
Well, and it's like things aren't what they seem. She's like drunk, drugged, whatever. And whatever's happening is actually happening, but it's not like her affecting her. Yeah, her
response is so opposite of what's actually happening that it's like unsettling.
Yeah.
Like as the reader, I think that's what I mean. It's like as the reader, that's one of those scenes that really captures that anxiety.
Yes, it was really just there was a lot of disturbing scenes.
Yeah, agreed. But in like a good way, like in a way that I want to read the sequel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can't wait to read the next one.
Yeah.
And I love the way it set it up. Like the next, you're like, okay, so a year and a day, this is going to be interesting.
And I think the setup feels very classic, like the YA and stuff that I used to read as a kid. So it was almost something comforting about the very easy connection to what is going to be the next book. Which granted, like we don't really know what the conflict is going to be in the next book, but it left off in this kind of like open-ended question, which was nice.
Like you were just like, I need to know how this goes down. Like
because the conversation she has with Carden where he's like, I don't know, maybe I'll learn to like power and maybe it'll be harder to get the crown off me than you think it will be. It won't be, but because he loves her.
Yeah.
Oh, that was another. Okay, so this is something that I just loved about her character too. We see it when they go to the mall. The guy like tries to come up and talk to her, and her response is just to, like punch him in the face and then kick him. And then she's even gonna kick him again once he's down, but she realizes that they have an audience. And then she's just like, "Oh my god, I think he was flirting with me." Like it just never occurred to her. And so then after that, every time like you would see see her interpretation of what Carden was thinking or doing. And then after she found her name written, I was like, honey, people don't write the names of people they hate that many times.
Yeah, that was interesting. And that's a good example of the unreliable writer, because narrator that makes me think now about like all of the times she thought Carden was looking at her with like disgust. Yeah, because there's even that time where the trolls are like, hey honey, and she's like, what? Like she doesn't get it, and it's like already like we're already this far.
Like a sitcom gag.
Yeah,
like that's how it feels, but like not in a bad way. That's like not to say like that's not to belittle it. I love it. I love that that's her, like her thinking inside when people are trying to hit on her. There's literally nothing funnier to me.
Yeah. Yeah, so then that's intriguing. I never thought of it that way of like, oh yeah, like maybe the way that she's been looking at Carden is like she's just can't imagine anyone, which is so it's really common for like a lot of YAs, right? For like the MC to be like self-deprecating and like hate themselves. And it's kind of refreshing that that's like not the main like
because like it's not coming from a place of like low self-esteem.
Yeah, because she's already the lowest. She already knows, like she's already kind of accepted that like there's not much she's got going for her, so she's making it.
Exactly. And I wouldn't even, I don't know that I would say she has low self-esteem. Like I would say that Taryn definitely has low self-esteem, and that's why she's like lowering herself by continuing to date and betroth or whatever, potentially marry Locke.
I think she's just like, I don't think she has low self-esteem. I'm saying she's already like accepted that she's like not like fairy, and she's gonna have to figure out a way. So she's almost like challenge accepted. Like
no, exactly. She's like, I will prove to you just how worthy.
And that's exciting. That's like so fun to like, it's kind of refreshing to read after like a lot of like self-deprecating like characters, you know.
And I think what I like about it as well is that, because like you said, like we get into the story and she's not this badass yet.
Like you think she's a victim, and then she kind of floats and you realize she's not, because she's standing up to him.
Yeah, we're getting there at the point, like at her breaking point.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I literally, like, I could not care less, Valerian, please just stop.
Yeah.
And then stabs him when he decides to not stop. Like she warned him, honestly, both times. And so you see that because she starts at the very beginning and you can tell she doesn't believe it. And that's why, again, like why this whole, she doesn't see the flirting is so funny, not because she has like you said, like she's not self-deprecating, but because she just can't fathom that they would see her any other way, or that they would like turn an eye to her like that. And then they do, and she's like, are you threatening me? Like, well, like sees it all so paranoid.
Yeah. And like I would say too that it's not self-deprecating. It's like almost like she believes these people hate her.
Oh yeah,
like that's in her guts, you know. And that's like almost in place of self-deprecation. It's like this outside deprecation. And so then she mistakes Carden's, because I do believe Nicasia and like Locke and whatever, like they're not a fan of her. And that's why they pick on her. And like,
well, and that's why Locke chose Taryn, because Taryn refuses to see that she can have power. She's chosen instead to just subject herself.
Power probably scares her. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see it, like, because there's definitely hatred going on, and there's definitely the opportunity for victimhood happening, but it's not self-inflicted. It's this thing that's happening outside of her, that is happening outside of her, but as also other things are getting like grouped into that as being like hatred, like Carden's expression, or like God, I like the scene you were talking about where she like punches the guy and like kicks him and stuff. I used to be like that, like, because I like as like a preteen or a teenager, when like guys would like hoot or holler or whatever, because they're like, oh, a girl, she's kind of attractive. I thought that they were just being like dicks. That was like a protective thing that I would do. I would literally be a bitch. Like I would just be like,
well, I think catcalling is a much different situation though.
And not catcalling, but it was like kids' way of doing it, which is like, I'm not saying it's not catcalling. I'm just saying that like a lot of girls would have been like, oh, and like been friendly. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing to do, but I'm saying that like you get tagged as the bitch because you're not like following the like the like
you can
social rules,
and you're tagged the bitch. Yeah,
exactly.
Like, I think the social
but I would like just... but I am not like a confrontational person, and so for me it was like I would just be like I would just be like really mean, like the meanest I've ever been would be like when that happened, because I'm like, what? I also couldn't accept the fact that they were actually might have been like attracted to me. I never saw it as that. I saw it as like, you're just being stupid and annoying, like stop. Yeah. And I didn't, as a child, didn't like really understand until like later that like, yeah, it's like not appropriate. Like,
well, I would also argue that like,
so I can relate with her on that level. I'm like, yeah, like
I think it's like a normal response. Okay, maybe not like the extent that she went to, but like to not automatically think like that the stranger that's walking up to me is attempting to flirt is like a pretty normal thing as well. And that's why I also find it funny because I think immediately after that, she was like, she had this question of like, I could never return to the human world. Mm-hmm. And it's because she can't read those things at all. Like she could have just walked away. In fact, it would have been easier if she just kept walking, like, sorry, and like kept walking. She could have done the fairy thing and like seduced him and done all of that. But like, it did not occur to her for a second that he was anything but a threat.
Yeah.
And I find that actually hilarious.
Yeah.
Because that's also like a normal response to just being kind of like confronted by this strange man in a public space.
And that's why I relate with her, because I at the time didn't really realize it, because you're like reacting out of like impulse almost, but it's like I knew it was like not a threat, you know, like I knew it was a threatening like kind of way interaction that I was like, I did not ask for this, like what are you doing?
Exactly. Yes.
Like but and then it gets tagged, you get tagged as a bitch, and that's the meanest, like that's the easiest way to get me like to be that way. Like anyway, I think interesting.
When I was younger, I used to do the non-response, and then as I got older and I realized that they still didn't appreciate the non-response, I was just like actively a bitch. If they were going to call me a bitch anyway, I was like, well, I'll live up to the name then.
Yeah.
But for the same reason, where it's like you can feel the threat sometimes. And we can't say one way or the other what his intent was. It was a book. It was like two very short interactions. One where he just smiled at her, and another time when she's like, why the fuck is that guy smiling at me? But I will trust a woman's instinct on these things.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the first moments when like her being 17 like clicked in my brain. And possibly because she took down like a full-grown boy, but very quickly and easily. No, I think Jude is more relatable than she gives herself credit for as a character, because of her, like you're saying, like her insistence on like, I don't want to be as good, I want to be better. And so, but that's also one of the small moments where I was like, that's a very human, you don't see it, but that's a very human response to something happening.
Yeah.
I don't want her to move back to the human world though, but
no, she won't.
Yeah, no. Not saying that like, look, she's more human than she thinks, but like, I think that they're not as different as Fairy likes to think. Yeah.
Well, and that's why I found it interesting that she was like, he's gonna go live in the human world, Oak, you know, and build character or something.
Yeah.
And then he won't, because we also haven't talked about like essentially mortals as slaves, and her trying to liberate Sophie and she just wanting to kill herself. That was rough.
That was rough, yeah. Especially afterwards when, sorry, I'm gonna sit on my leg as I do. at the coronation when she thinks she sees Sophie as one of the undersea people.
Yeah.
Because that fate wouldn't have happened to her. And so you get this kind of like philosophical question about knowing the truth versus being compelled to live in ignorance like she was before. Because her life wasn't exactly good, of course, because she was like part of Baelkin's house, but she also didn't commit suicide.
Yeah.
And who's to say whether or not her life is better?
I couldn't help but think it was like, yeah, I think that is a testament to Matic.
Yeah.
Because she's just been literally in Scoresold and Sophie, and for God knows how long.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. Like she just ate some food off the table and then was found. And so the kind of, I guess, psychological trauma that one goes through where it's like, I don't want to know that this happened. Like, I would rather die. Is definitely different than, her Jude's situation. And so it kind of shows you like how dark, and we also don't know what she witnessed in that house, because there's that really weird scene when she first goes to the Hollow Hall, and there's like mortals like half naked, just like draped around, like it was just like this really weird, like you're like, what goes on here, and then she sees like him Carden getting struck, and then it's just there's a line where Baelkin even tries to get Carden to kill the mortal in that whole scene, and Carden doesn't, which I mean it only alludes to it, but it does imply some like pretty fucking dark things that the humans and the mortals at that household have to go through. Yes. So that's kind of exciting, kind of exciting to see what they do with that in the next book, because I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And I think that was kind of part of her planning of like Oak being amongst mortals.
Yeah, agreed. I would be curious I'd be interested to see if we do get an answer as to whether she actually saw Sophie at the coronation or if she was just seeing stuff out of guilt. Because it would be kind of nice to have like an answer, I guess, to the like, is she better off now? Yeah. Is it different because she's in a different court? Maybe she's treated more fairly at this other place, and so she can cope a little bit easier with the world and her knowledge and like the knowledge of the world, Are
you talking about Sophie?
Yeah.
Is she alive?
Yeah, when they went to the coronation, that's what I've been talking about. She says she thinks that she sees Sophie with the undersea fae.
Right. And then and then she turns away and she's like, did I imagine it? But it could be a strong. Yeah.
Because she has this line where she, like, as she's trying to figure that out, she was like, some of them, or they're known for taking drowned soldiers or drowned sailors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so she like smiles and she sees like a row of sharp teeth.
What would I do without you? You're just picking up all the lore and all the politics and all the lore. Whereas I'm like, let me read you this beautiful quote.
Okay, we both have our purposes. We both serve in our own way.
We do. I love it. I really do.
It's great because I don't have like a lot of memories from like school. Don't ask me to do any math. Don't ask me dates. In fact, very rarely, please, should you even ask me authors. But I can tell you what happened in the plot of a book that I read when I was 12.
Yeah.
So, not to brag or anything, but all completely useless. But I am pretty good at pub quizzes.
Oh, I've always wanted to do one. I kind of did one. I didn't pay for it, but I listened and I tried to answer them.
Nice. Not to
we brag, should do one when we go to London.
Yes. I did a few when I was in London. They were pretty fun. I did a Harry Potter one with my cousin a few years back, and I got us to second place. So
Yeah. Well, we did that quiz.
Which one?
With Ian and
yes,
Abby, and we won.
Yes. Yeah.
What did we win?
I don't remember. I think it was
nothing memorable.
Yeah. It was probably just like drinks or something.
Well, it was,
Which, like,
we were like free wine, and then we like went, and I loved it because you like knew all the memes. Abby and Ian kind of like knew like obscure literature. No, Abby was like, she did like history, so she kind of knew that
knew the
stuff.
history really well. Yeah.
And Ian like knows like poets and literature really well, like and, names and like quotes,
current events.
Yeah, current events. I don't know what purpose I served.
Well,
there was just a few outliers that I was like, I know this one.
And then the best thing was that like it was this group of people who very clearly met very often and probably didn't expect anyone else to show up.
Yeah.
And then we won, and then we just kind of left.
Yeah. We didn't get to know anyone.
Yeah, no, we did not. And I don't think we showed up for any of their other meetings.
No.
Was it just an English department thing?
I think so. Humanities or English.
Yeah. It was something really small, but
yeah. All right. Well, last thoughts.
I cannot wait for the next one. And their kiss, so good. The moment when she was like, I knew his hands were moving slow because he was trying to resist. And I was like, oh, so now you understand.
Yeah, now you can read it.
Yeah, now you can read another person.
I like when they're on the map and she's like watching his fingers like trace the map, and she's like trying not to look at it, and it's so cute.
Well, there's something very nice about long fingers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. And then later when they're alone and she says the thing about like the problem with kissing somebody is that now everything feels like there's going to be another kiss.
Yes.
I'm like, well, does it?
We all
tell us.
We've all been there. I feel like that took me back. Like
tell me how much you want to kiss him, Jude, please. Yeah.
Also, her fucking name. I love it. I told Milo, I said, okay, if we have a daughter, I want to name her Jude.
Yeah.
I think it's super cute for a girl.
Agreed.
And then he was like, well, we can't because I had a babysitter named Jude and we didn't like her. I'm like, well, forget about her and think about this.
Create new memories.
Yes. I'm like, Jude can be whoever she wants. Yeah, I loved her. She's I've heard good things about her character.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'm sold. Like,
Agreed.
I think she's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Which I wasn't expecting, because I, like, from the beginning just really did not like Carden.
Yeah.
That changed, but I was like, I was worried that I wouldn't like the others because of how much I really wasn't liking Carden.
Mm-hmm. Well, I knew Maddox was going to be like your daddy character. Knew that.
This is one that I'm happy to like let be a little evil. Because they're fairies. Exactly.
It's fairy.
Yes, like if they're not, it's boring. It's boring as fuck.
Like
I like that he's a little dark.
There's a lot of books that have some YA books, I won't name them, that are like, everyone's concerned about killing people and like what it means morally, and like then you have to like you get into this like philosophical discussion with like their actions, and I just love that like we're all just living this like dark fairy life where we don't ask like questions. It's almost like just about like getting what you want, and kind of like a weird like that's the moral, that's the right and wrong, is like, who are we rooting for? Jude. Why? Because she said we are. And you just follow it and you're like there for it.
I think that's one of the reasons that I really like fairy as a fantasy subgenre,
mm-hmm.
because it does invite that little bit of amorality.
Yes.
Because they're honest, but they're not truthful.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess they're truthful, but they're not honest.
Yeah.
And I think the plot of the book does, but also like we said, like Holly Black does this really great job of writing it in a way that also reflects that.
Yeah.
Which is just so fun to read.
Yeah.
She really grasped that part of enjoying fairy stories.
Yes.
Okay, what about you? Final thoughts?
Oh, I mean, those were mine.
Okay.
I just really enjoyed Jude. I really enjoyed the like, you know, the aesthetics of the book, just like all of like the descriptions of like what was happening, like it was normal, like, oh, and then I just like hopped on the toad. Like,
yeah.
You're just like, fuck yes, hop on the toad. So cool. I just loved the way that it was set up. I loved that she just like tricked us all. And like, I'm just so excited to kind of see like, how is she like going to go further? Is it going to be a bit more about, obviously it's going to be a bit more about her and Cardin, the next book. So I'm kind of excited to see that unravel. So
I like that we end this one with them still kind of technically being enemies.
Yes.
Like the line between
this is a true enemies to lovers. I think.
Yes. The overlap. It's more like a Venn diagram. It's not even like it's not a quadrant.
It's not black and white. Yeah,
not at all, because they made out and left that room and still hated each other a little bit.
Yeah
He doesn't even hate her, he just hates how much he likes her.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you their taunting and the way she fought back helped as well, because she showed him that she could hold her own. And there's probably a part of him that was like, that's interesting for reasons I won't get into and think about too hard about right now.
Like a bit of relief.
Yeah.
Like, because if
they fought back, or if they were taunting her and she reacted like Taryn, it wouldn't be interesting.
Yeah, she wouldn't. He wouldn't not be thinking about her all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But she refused to let him think about anything else.
Yeah.
Without even realizing what she was doing.
Yeah.
He likes a challenge, apparently. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna resist reading the next one so that we can read it for next season. I'll try not to cry about it.
Yeah.
But I know I'll be excited. Like, this is really good. So
yeah, it was also
I'm not
like
gonna lose the hype.
A really good introduction into the world and like the politics in like a really digestible way. And so now it's probably gonna perhaps you always make ideas and assumptions about what the next book is going to be about, but it never is. But I kind of,
you get all your hopes up for every possible thing that could happen.
I kind of hope that like, okay, it's going to be a little bit like, it's probably going to be like more romance, because it's going to be like more like her and Cardin one-on-one, but there's probably going to be a lot more core intrigue, more like politics as well, and probably more of his backstory. But of course, watch the next episode and read the next book, and you'll realize that it's not. It's going to be something completely different, because I said it out loud.
I hope, and hopefully that changes the potential of whether or not I'm right or wrong. I mean, the books have been out for a couple of years now, so I guess it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But because at the very end, she earned her name with the Court of Shadows. So we know she's going to be doing more of her spying, and I love that, at least to them, like now that Dane is gone, it's just them working together as this cohort. And she's proven to them that she's worthy.
I love that she just like walks into his office. It's like, oh, I guess this is mine now.
I
love it so much.
She earned it. Prince, she claimed it. Yes, exactly.
She has true power.
Yes, and she didn't learn anything from Dane. She learned everything she knows from Roach and from Ghost, and soon from the bomb. And so I like that we don't have to see her learning that now. We're just going to see them in action. Because that final like plan that they threw together in just like a matter of a few hours was amazing.
That was really good.
The way they executed it, the way that they like can trust each other and they know where the others are, like you can tell they're a good team.
And it
makes me very scared for what that means. But also excited to see it play out.
It was also just incredible to read.
Yes.
She's a very good writer.
Yes, she
Very
is.
good writer.
I stand by that. I think I read something of hers before, but for the life of me, I can't figure out what it was.
Yeah.
So,
There you are.
Say? Yep.
All right. Well, I guess that's a wrap on the first book. We are going to be doing the next book next season, so don't worry. And yeah, join us next week.
Yep. What are we reading next week?
Wuthering Heights.
Yes.
My favorite. I'm so excited. Now that I've been on this YA high, I need to come back down to earth to the classics. Kind of get into that frame of mind again.
Call Wuthering Heights coming back down to
earth. That's true.
We just need a little bit more tragedy in our lives.
Yeah.
I need a good cry, you know?
Yeah. But actually, quick announcement, I forgot to say at the beginning. We have started a book club, and you can go and sign up. Just go to our website, inbedwithbookspod.com, and there will be a link to sign up so that you get the Discord link. We're just going to be meeting once a month next year.
Yeah.
And we're going to be reading. What are we going to be reading, Melissa?
We're going to be reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, the entire series, at least everything that's published so far. So we invite you to join us, whether you are a newbie like myself or a seasoned veteran of the series like Bethany. You're welcome to join us. We will have like a full schedule for the readings. We are technically only meeting once a month, but obviously because it's a Discord, it's going to be open all the time for talking about the series, talking with other people, talking with us. We want it to be a mix of people who just really like the series or potentially could like the series, think they could. So join us and
we meet,
talk about fairy smut with us.
Yes, it's gonna be this is our first fairy book that we did, the Cruel Prince, and then we're entering fairyland right now this year. This is the introduction.
Switching gears from vampires, from my vampire obsession to Bethany's fairy obsession. Yeah.
You're obsessed with fairies too.
Not as viscerally as I am
as you are vampires. Yeah. Visceral.
Fairies. I thought I had to choose my word carefully. Fairies are to you what vampires are to me, I think.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
So we're going to be reading all sorts of fairy smut next year. So join us. Our first meeting is going to be on January 29th, but you're welcome to join anytime. But definitely sign up so that you can get that link.
Yeah. And the first meeting is just going to be us all talking.
Yeah.
You don't even have to read anything for the first meeting.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Okay. Well, until next week, happy reading.
Happy reading.
Bye.
Bye.